And we're live. And today I just wanted to talk about, well, you can tell by the title, The Ugly Truth About Islam. What brought this to mind was the the discovery yesterday that one of my posts had been removed from Facebook, and this is the second one within a month for being critical of Islam. People were bewailing, a couple of people on Facebook were bewailing the fact that someone had been mean to Muslims and that Muslims were the subject of Islamophobia, which is an Orwellian euphemism for critiquing the most violent religion on the planet. It's this far left neologism, which it sort of misconstrues the motive of people who are critical of Islam, um, kind of conflating uh, fear and hatred. When the reality is that there's a lot to be. We shouldn't be fearful of Islam. We should be apprehensive of our leaders and the people who want to normalize and mainstream this ideology and this philosophy, which has led to the downfall of so many civilizations since its inception. And uh, it's really disturbing the alacrity with which these social media companies are cracking down on any sort of criticism of a religious dogma l- ha- that basically kills 10,000 people every single year. Putting aside the putting aside the fact that this is a dogma unto death, that this is a spiritual death cult as well as a literal death cult, that these people are being led, they're kind of lulled into this. I don't even know how to describe it, but they're lulled into this false sense of security that they're going to go to heaven by doing what they perceive as good works based on the Quran, which is a plagiarized, just um, mishmash of plagiarized and corrupted snippets of scripture mixed in with Arab folklore and um, and bizarre teachings that spring from the mind of Muhammad, that they're going to get into heaven, which most people don't, which most Muslims don't even understand. They don't understand Arabic. They can't read their own purported holy book. So it's it's a very bizarre religion, and um, which does lead people to death, both in a literal and an eternal sense. But even putting that aside, even if you don't adhere to any sort of theistic worldview, and Islam is a terrible ideology, and it's in a terribly oppressive religion that is undermining the West in every conceivable sense. And the the fact that this is being um, forced upon us unwillingly, people in the United States and in Europe. This is a completely hostile foreign ideology, and people who are Muslim, who are serious Muslims, once you dig down deep into it, make this clear. It's a very Arabized um, religion and religious and political and ideological belief system, even in jihadist groups like Al Qaeda or ISIS. All of the important work is done by Arabs, and it's a very racist and it's a very racist ideology. I mean, David Wood was suspended. Speaking of social media, he was suspended, or his live streaming privileges were suspended because he made very benign, fact-based videos that pointed out that Islam is racist, and that Muhammad is racist, was racist. That he thought he prophesied that a black man would destroy the Kaaba. He sold African slaves. His followers were obsessed with the fact that he was lily white, which and that's true. He was very white. One of his descendants, Mr. Yaqubi, is a redheaded, extremely pale imam in Syria. He's one of the descendants of Muhammad, and he's extremely white. So this was a priority for him, and everything. And Islam was the greatest slave master in history, and it still is. It's the only religion that still sanctions and condones slavery in the present tense. So, there's nothing that's justifiable about Islam, and yet the people control these social media networks, including Mark Zuckerberg, who ostensibly is Jewish, who belongs to a religion that, well, not but a religion, but belongs to a group of people that Muslims despise. That anti-Semitism is intrinsic to Islam, and yet Mark Zuckerberg is doing the bidding of these fanatical Muslims. And this is the situation we have now, where there are de facto blasphemy laws. There's, on the one hand, they're informing people that their posts are being blocked in Pakistan. And not to get off into a tangent, but this is something that's remarkable in itself, that you have people like the Apostate Prophet and David Wood, a Christian apologist for Acts 17 apologetics, and all sorts of other people who are critical of Islam. They're being blocked from posting in order to abide by Pakistani laws. And this is something that people have raised the censorship question. But something else that struck me about this is why on earth are social media tech giants like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, which is owned by Facebook now, why are they preoccupied with complying with Pakistani blasphemy laws? Why do they need to be Sharia compliant in order to satisfy Pakistan? Pakistan is not an oil-rich, extraordinarily wealthy Gulf sheikdom. It's not. There is no. What sort of material incentive is there to comply with Pakistani laws? Yes, there are a lot of Pakistanis online. So I mean but this is a semi-literate, backwards, just completely retrograde state where honor killings are honor killings proliferate, where 80% of the women who are involved in some sort of um, uh, relationship are abused, or marriage mostly are abused, where Christians are murdered with impunity, and Asia Bibi is still, we're not sure if she's out of the country, but she was uh, almost put to death for defending her faith and basically just living as a Christian. It's it's also it's a client of China. There's nothing what practical, even if you were going to justify this decision on the decision to so to comply with Pakistani blasphemy laws, even if you were going to justify that on purely expedient grounds, what is there uh, to gain from being uh, an online resource in Pakistan? It's just a joke of a country, a bad joke of a country, which contributes nothing to our planet. I mean, it wouldn't be that hard to justify saying no. We're not going to submit to blasphemy laws. We're not going to be used by however many millions of Pakistanis there are. You know, whatever small um, whatever small benefit we might derive, whatever small minuscule financial benefit we might derive from uh, being in Pakistan, we're going to forego that just to have some integrity. But no, companies, these multinational corporate entities will never do that. I mean, and someone brought this up at the Quilliot Circle event the other day with Tim Pool, where Tim Pool also mentioned the fact that that we're forced to endure blasphemy laws in the West through these social media companies' contracts and their provision for Islam. Someone brought that up during excuse me, the event, and it's true. It's true. These companies, they're essentially forcing us to abide by the laws of foreign, just the most backwards, the most barbaric Muslim countries on the planet, and that would be Pakistan. No one in the United States who's not a jihadist would be willing to live in Pakistan, to go to Pakistan and live there, and yet we're being forced to abide by the censorship paradigms that are in place over there. And it's just a very frustrating, disturbing fact of life in our current day. And if you're someone like me who's been aware of the danger presented by by our society's um, deference to Islam, it's something that you're not surprised by, but just continues to be a frustrating part of existence, especially if you communicate through social media, which is currency of debate in the 21st century. It's just a very frustrating aspect of existence, especially if like me and like a lot of rational people, you look at Islam the same way that you would any other barbaric cult. I mean, let me just put this just to sum up for the time being, and I'll do more videos about this in the future. But um, look at how most people view Scientology. they look at it as if it's a joke. It's just a cult that you can make fun of, sometimes not without legal repercussions, but basically something to be mocked. And because it's ridiculous, it their doctrines are absurd. They're just a demonstrably false cult. And the thing is, Islam is even more so with Islam. Islam is even more of a demonstrably false, ridiculous cult. As David Wood said, Muhammad was the most transparently false prophet in the history of false prophets. He made L. Ron Hubbard look like Elijah. I mean, I don't want to be blasphemous, but he. My point is, he is a false prophet beyond false prophets. I mean, everything about Islam is ridiculous. If you actually dissect the Quran and unpack the Hadith, there's nothing about Islam which does not deserve to be mocked. And yet we don't do it. And the reason we don't do it is because there are a billion Muslims who will put people to death violently. And so basically it's fear. And the terrible thing about this is the people who are truckling to fear are not admitting that that's the justification for their bowing the knee to Islam. They're creating this ridiculous social justice paradigm where we have to view Muslims as sympathetic, or not even Muslims so much, but we have to look with sympathy on a barbaric, obscurantist, just hideous and demonstrably false belief system, because a large percentage of the people, not even most of the people, but a large percentage of the people who practice it without any thought or any sort of contemplation are brown, are non-white. So we have to basically submit to the whims of an insane religious cult that's less that has less truth than Scientology, which everyone which is roundly, well, not everyone, but which is roundly mocked. So we have to submit to this false religion, which is more ridiculous and less truthful than Scientology is, because most of the people who practice it are non-white, which to me is idiotic, and it's a recipe for disaster. And we'll just see how disastrous it'll be in the days to come.